Good evening, everybody. This is Radio Free Mormon here with my compañero Bill Reel for another episode of the Mormon Newscast, where you might be wondering, is Rebecca Biblioteca? Well, she is not here tonight. I don't know if where her location is a complete secret. I'm not going to reveal it. All I'm going to say is, as the sun slips away from the shore and our ship sinks slowly in the west, we wave you farewell from the tropical islands of the Caribbean. Mwah, mwah. Hope you're having a great time, Rebecca. How's that for an opening, Bill?
That's great. It is Monday, the 20th of October, and I'm excited for the newscast tonight, RFM.
Yes, and we've got lots of news. Frankly, Rebecca's been shipping it to us for the most part, but that's only because I begged. So here's the top stories for tonight. Number one, the church avoids Dallas misstep in newest video. Number two, is the LDS Prophet called of God or not? Number three, we have work left to do, says President Oaks about the role of women in the church. Number four, what one apostle learned from Watergate and Nixon, and perhaps what that apostle did not learn from Watergate and Nixon. Next is, how do men feel about the new tank top garments? Remember, they get new tank top garments too. Barstool Sports, unwilling to use restrained language to meet BYU standards. And finally, polyamory loses. Church says one spouse model best for kids and culture. Which makes you wonder what those Mormons were doing all that time with the polygamy stuff.
It will be interesting when we get to that story, because I don't think they thought this through.
Well. Oh, so this is you. You have the first story, don't you, Bill?
Yeah, so let me, this slide is here because I want the audience, we've got several stories here at the beginning tied to the new first presidency being announced and them doing their first interview, a staged one, but an interview nonetheless. And there are several facets of that we're going to go into. So while our first story delves into some missteps that Brother Stevenson made in his announcement, I also want the audience to pay particular attention to how Gary Stevenson frames the process about how a new prophet gets called when the old one passes away. And so if you'll listen to this next clip with that dual purpose in mind. So here it is. And this is the video, and I'm going to push play. Two things to pay attention to. So one is that Gary makes some flubs with the way he says things several times, and no big deal. We all do this kind of thing. But what we're going to draw attention to is what the church has done with that as a follow-up. And then the other thing is, again, what I just said is to pay attention to how Gary frames the death of a prophet and the calling of a new one. He calls it relevatory, but I think he meant revelatory.
He might have meant lavatory.
He might have, and he
should
should
tell at this point.
He should definitely wash his hands. All right, so here we go.
I am Elder Gary E. Stevenson of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and have been asked to conduct this afternoon's announcement. We welcome you from the Conference Center in Salt Lake City, Utah, on this memorable occasion of the presentation of a new First Presidency. With the passing of our beloved prophet, Russell M. Nelson, on September 27th, 2025, the First Presidency was dissolved. The men previously serving as counselors assumed their places in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, and that quorum assumed leadership of the church, with the senior apostle at its head. Members of the Quorum of the 12 met earlier today to consider reconstituting the First Presidency. This revelatory experience again confirmed to each of us in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles that Jesus Christ directs his church. We are honored now to announce that President Dallas Harris Oaks was set apart as the 18th president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints this morning.
I so sustain. Now Dallas Oaks is the president.
So he does say Dallas Oaks, and we've made fun of it on Mormonism After Dark. We've made fun of it.
Plowed right through it.
Say what?
He just plowed right through it.
He
I
did.
was asking you Friday night. Do you think he knows by now that he flubbed it? Has anybody told him?
I think so. I think he now knows the name of the prophet of his church. It was a strange thing because we all know it's Dallin Oaks.
Yeah.
We've never heard him referred to as Dallas. That's something that, unlike Cardinal Ellis, who doesn't know the names of the members of the First Presidency, we know them. And I was certain, like, no, Dallas isn't right. But then I thought maybe I'm the one who's wrong. And you and I and Rebecca were talking in a text thread, and I had to look it up because I thought, well, maybe his real name is Dallas and he goes by Dallin. But Dallas was just an error. He moved through it as if he believed it was Dallas, but that is not true. It is Dallin.
No, Dallas would be cool.
Yeah. And
if I'm Cardinal Ellis, I'm pointing to Gary Stevenson right now and say, see, I'm not the only one who doesn't know the names of the members of the First Presidency.
That's right. He doesn't either.
Right.
He works for the guy, takes marching orders from him, and he doesn't know the guy's first name.
We know it was the Harris that threw him off. You know, he just, the S from the Harris got put on the end of the Dallin.
It was. But what happened afterward was that the church, and let's see if I can put this one up actually. Let's see here. So the church came out with this, Dallin H. Oaks, named 18th president of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. This is the LDS newsroom. It's a news release. And if you were to scroll down, you can click, there's a video that right below this, and wanted to play the video for you because they shortened up Stevenson's announcement in such a way as to allow them to remove that mistake. Somebody was obviously bothered by that. Heavens forbid these guys look human for 3 minutes, but they didn't want that to happen. So here is that video with Dallas removed. And this is such a small point, but it at least tells you that often the LDS Church might be a little more about image than we would like to hope that they would be.
Center in Salt Lake City, Utah, on this memorable occasion with the passing of our beloved prophet, Russell M. Nelson. Members of the Quorum of the 12 met earlier today to consider reconstituting the First Presidency. This revelatory experience again confirmed to each of us in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles that Jesus Christ directs his church.
After an extended process of...
And you can just see right there, they just immediately go to Oaks speaking. They did not want that flub to make it into the final cut.
No. You know what they're doing tonight, though, at the conference center, don't you?
What's that?
It's shut off to the public because they're having him retape that.
It isn't the first time that's been done. So
it's easier to stick it in online than it is on videotapes.
Yeah. Well, they followed this up with just a few days later, they followed this up with an interview, and it was a staged interview. It's a member of the church's press corps, whatever that is. And
Diane Sawyer.
Yeah, sort of looks a little bit like her. She sits down with this first president. She works for the church. The questions are scripted beforehand. The answers are scripted beforehand, and everybody knows what's going to be asked and what's going to be said. But as we listen to this, I would want to note what Gary Stevenson just said. He described the process. He said, when Russell Nelson dies and when every LDS prophet has passed away before this moment, the existing members of the First Presidency immediately essentially are no longer in the First Presidency. They go back into the Quorum of the 12, and now it's a quorum of 14, at least in most moments. There are exceptions to that, but in most moments, there are 14 now apostles, and they meet at some future moment. They have a discussion about whether it is appropriate to reconstitute the First Presidency. And if they say yes, then Gary Stevenson said then they pray and have a revelatory, although it's a revelatory, but they have a revelatory experience that by which he knows that the church is led by God, because God determines who is going to be the president of the church. Now, it just so happens that it's always the person with the most seniority, but it doesn't have to be based on what Stevenson says. It could be any of them.
He gave that implication, even though it's ironclad, it's always going to be the most senior apostle.
Yes. But the process that Stevenson explained and expressed to us so that we could understand how it works, it seems like it would be void of the moment Nelson dying, Oakes being 100% sure that he is the next prophet of the church.
Right.
And
that's the question he gets asked, isn't it?
it is the question he gets asked in this next clip. So let me grab that. View slideshow. Okay, so here is that one. I just have to wait for a text to leave on StreamYard. There we go. And here is Oakes asked about this very thing.
Well, thank you so much for taking this time today. We appreciate it so much. President Oakes, at President Nelson's funeral, you described him as your best friend and most effective teacher. I'm curious if you could help us understand your first feelings when you realized that your friend and teacher had passed and that the responsibility of leading the church as the new prophet would fall to you.
Now, it could just be that she asked a question and didn't understand the process. This would be a beautiful moment for Oakes to say, that's not how it works. I went back into the 12. We had a discussion, But, and also she talks about the funeral at first, but her exact question is, the moment you learned that Nelson died, how did you deal with both your sorrow and feeling the burden of being the next prophet of the church?
That you would be. And if anybody would have corrected her, it would have been Elder Oakes.
Yeah. And this is where he gives the game away. She's already given it away, but if he confirms it, they've given the game away.
Well, I had the two reactions implied in your question. I felt that I had lost a friend. I sat by him for 41 years in the highest councils of the church, and I knew what it would mean to be in the chair he had occupied so capably. Yep. So I felt sorrow and burden.
Boom, boom, right there.
Yeah. And so I'll just note that when there's a truth and a lie and you try to maintain both at all times, you are bound to mess it up. And he does here.
And I think that that makes me wonder. I've always, since the 80s, okay, for 40 years, I've known that that's the way the succession happens in the church. But why is it that Gary Stevenson is talking like it's all kind of mystical and perhaps miraculous and that it's a lavatory experience? I don't think it takes a lavatory experience. You just pick the guy who has the most seniority.
If Elder Oakes knew the moment he learned that President Nelson had passed, that he was the next prophet of the church, which he told us that, not anyone else, he asked it, he confirms it, then there is not only no need, there simply is no place to even see revelation in the process.
There isn't. And I will say it for the third time this year, which is that these are the kind of systems the church creates in order to make up for the lack of revelation from God. You have a procedure that you follow. That's the way you do things when there's no outside force making its will known to you. You just go with the plan. And this plan's been around for a long time.
Yeah. There's two ways to prevent chaos, right? Jesus could come into the room and tell the 14 men how he would like his church organized. Or you can have a formality where the moment the previous prophet, seer, and revelator passes away, the one with the most seniority automatically knows he's the next prophet and assumes responsibility.
And it really is, in some ways, there's good to it. I think it would be nice if they had a cap, like maybe they have to retire at the age of 95 or something reasonable like that, some kind of cap. But other than that, it kind of makes sense that they don't vote amongst themselves or put themselves out as candidates for the membership to vote on. And I could see that as leading to maybe schisms.
Yes, but when the church set up common consent, it was established that the members of the church could actually outvote God. and determined to do or to pull things back that God wanted to do the opposite of.
Mhm.
And we even seen that play out a couple of times. So I'll just leave that there. Then the other thing this goes into is a facet of what happens here. And so there was an article in the Salt Lake Tribune that came out today that said, we have work left to do to boost women, says new LDS Church President Dallin Oaks. And in this interview that I just showed a part of, we'll go into a little bit more of it, but in their first interview together, Oaks and his two counselors acknowledged that we have work left to do when it comes to recognizing and including women's gifts in the church. And you and I talked about this on Mormonism After Dark. He said that women are God's daughters destined for choicest blessings, and then added the church, and I thought this was interesting, quote, hasn't always been wise, unquote, in using their great qualifications and powers. In other words, they see there's an imbalance and they're signaling a readiness to address it, at least in part. Alongside that, they emphasize that bringing male and female perspectives together helps the church get closer to divine perspective, and praised women's remarkable capacity to serve. At the same time, there was no direct promise of major structural changes like priesthood access or gender parity in leadership. The message was more that they recognize this, they're thinking about it, but don't expect a revolution just yet. For the audience, this signals that the institution is cautiously opening the door to questions about what women can be and do while still keeping its traditional boundaries firmly in view. And I wanted folks to listen to this part of the interview because you brought this up in Mormonism After Dark.
Yeah.
The language they use seems to tell me they acknowledge they've missed the mark in the past. They have to do better, and they're going to, but it is going to take some time.
Can I say a couple things here, Bill? First off, this whole quote from, and if you could put that back up, because one of the comments was about that.
Mm-hmm.
What does this mean? What does this statement mean in a church that's claimed to be led by revelation from God? We have work left to do to boost women, says President Dallin Oaks. Well, what does that work look like? I mean, why does it have to be work? Isn't there revelation from God? And that was what I was thinking. That was the first comment.
Yes, in other words, they could fix it like this. All it takes is God to actually speak and say, hey, guys, cross that sentence out, put this sentence in. Here's how those roles are going to look. Here's what they can do. Why does it take years of discussion? I think you make a great point. This should be a revelation. If it's this difficult, that over hundreds of years they've got it wrong, they tweaked it, they've tried to get it right, they keep making mistakes, they still have work left to do. It seems like God isn't talking to them any differently than he talks to you or me.
Yeah. Now, the second thing is about the question that, I'm sorry, I don't know the reporter's name. I think she might be from the Deseret News or the Trib, but at any rate, the reporter's going to ask the question about women in the church. She's going to ask two questions, okay, neither of which will be answered by any of the three in the first presidency. And it'll be very clear what those questions are about the role of women in the church. I suppose maybe this statement by Elder Oaks is very brief. Maybe that comes the closest to responding to it, but everything else I think is just sort of pie in the sky, fluffy response.
Yeah, and I didn't include those for that reason. They're not addressing the question. You had pointed that out Friday night too, that they told emotional stories as a way to avoid the question directly. And Oaks doesn't give anything concrete other than to say, at least I took it this way, that the church had made mistakes in the past. It isn't getting it right yet. And there's work left to do to get this right, to have women have the roles that God intends for them. So
yes, and I would agree with the Tribune or whoever posted that story, that was the single most significant thing that was said in the interview.
Yeah, and you'll see that right here.
Resource and resolution of their unique issues, just as every other generation has.
It's not the right. So
It's
be
right
right
here now. It's okay.
Okay.
Just let it go.
Gotcha. Because I won't even explain it. We're good.
I'd also like to ask you about women in the church. Some in the media have suggested that the church presents impossibly high standards for women, and that the church does not give space for women to lead. What do you want people to understand about the role of women in the church today?
I say, remember, you have a Heavenly Father who loves you, who has created you to return to live with heavenly parents, to enjoy the choicest blessings that God has for his daughters, but it doesn't always come at once. We have work left to do, but we are a lot better off than we were even a decade ago. I think we should also say that we have not always been wise in using the great qualifications and powers of the daughters of God.
Not always wise in how we use the daughters of God. That indicates that they had blind spots and they missed the mark.
Yes, and I'm sure the daughters of God want to be used more anyway. They've identified new ways that we can use them. Once again, the church uses its members. Members exist for the church, not the church for the members.
What use is it to have prophets, seers, and revelators if they don't know how to figure things out and are often not wise about things? Why should we trust them?
Well, no. And he talks about that. And what about other issues that dog the church? Are they being unwise about that? And if so, does he know it? And if not, is he just in the position of the prior prophets who were unwise about it, that he says they were unwise, but they didn't know they were being so?
Yeah.
He's yanking the tablecloth off the top of the Mormon church and just hoping that he can say, yes, the flowers are still standing.
It's a strange thing when they say the quiet things out loud. And this is another instance. So this story here, this was also the Salt Lake Tribune, again, connected to this whole conversation, but meet the newly promoted LDS apostle and counselor to Dallin Oaks, who helped sink Nixon.
And saying he helped sink Nixon. What was he, a clerk for a Supreme Court justice? Was that it or something?
It says here, let me see.
Judge John Sirica.
Yeah, yep. It's the middle paragraph here. Christofferson's claim to fame before Mormon leadership was clerking for Judge John Sirica during Watergate, a front row seat to corruption and cover-ups. He talked a lot about integrity.
His contribution is that he had a front row seat to it.
Yeah.
He's a clerk for a judge. I mean, my gosh, that's stretching the point rather fine, I think, to say that, what is it? He, counselor to Dallin, who helped sink Nixon.
Yeah. His job was just to keep good records. It's not really a claim to fame.
Well, okay, this is a judge's clerk who does all the research and the writing for the judge and all that stuff. Going get the coffee, dropping the clothes off to be pressed and laundered and all that stuff.
Yeah. There's that.
As opposed to the court clerk. Anyway. So yeah, but that's what it said. Was there something else you wanted to say about this particular slide, Mr. Reel?
I'll just finish this. He talked a lot about integrity ever since, saying you don't need religion to be moral, but warning that what happens when leaders abandon their conscience. His style has always been more courtroom than campfire, formal, careful, and anchored in principles over emotion. And I'll just say, Christofferson appeals to me as a much more of a softy than Oaks, but at least in outward expression of ideas, he has been very supportive of Oaks' views and has seconded them when he's been asked to.
The Friday after the leak of the 2015 policy of exclusion, he's the apostle that got put forward to have the interview with the church spokesperson about it. And he got thrust there and he did his duty and people took note. Elder Oaks took note.
So for the man who sunk Nixon, you put this image in the slideshow.
I did. That's right. Because I was going to say this about that. When he said that about the relationship between President Christofferson and President Nixon, I thought you would think a guy who was that close to the Watergate scandal would appreciate how problematic cover-ups can be.
And yet he spent his second half of his life in a career that is full of them.
And he knows it.
Yeah.
I mean, pointing that out as stretched as the point is, and as non-existent really as it is, he had a front row seat. That's the most you could say. But to make that comparison immediately evokes the idea of all the cover-up he's involved in with the LDS Church.
Yeah, you would think that one would go, that Nixon, the thing that got him, I could see that up close, and then go, I'm now in a career where we have way more cover-ups than Nixon could ever have imagined.
I kind of think we're like Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford. I think we're like them. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah. Are you Dustin Hoffman or are you Robert Redford?
This is what I was going to ask you. Obviously, I'm Redford.
Yeah, obvious. All right. So you put this in about the youth of the church. I'll turn the time back over to you.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, on Mormonism After Dark last Friday, which we have every Friday at 8:00 p.m. Mountain Time, we went through a number of segments of I can hear the echo right now. I think. Okay, thank you. So we went through like 6 of them. We have 8. So if you want to find the first 6 and our commentary on the first 6, please, I refer you to last Friday's Mormonism After Dark. But not wanting to replow old ground, we'll start with 7 and just play 8. Now, 7 is the youth of the church. They are asked, do you have any message for the young single adults, the youth of the church? What's your message for them, guys?
President Oaks, what is your message to the rising generation, to the young single adults that are watching right now in the church and outside? What is your message to them?
You have a Heavenly Father who loves you. He's provided a plan for you, and it's best in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where we have an explanation for the purpose of life, challenges and activities that lead you along what we call the covenant path to a heavenly destiny. Trust in the Lord. Come and enjoy his blessings with us. Be true to your Savior, Jesus Christ, and he will lead you back to our Heavenly Father, whose children you are, who love you and have a heavenly destiny for you, every one of you.
This is such a special generation, isn't it? The
Yes.
rising generation. There's something different and unique about them.
Yes, I see them more firmly grounded and stronger than the generation in which I was raised.
President Eyring, what is your message to the rising generation?
Congratulations. The Lord saved you for the most exciting time in the history of his work in this world.
What?
And they can be optimistic if they'll trust in the Lord Jesus Christ and be his servants as much as they can be. I promise them a glorious future. And I think that it's already emerging.
Well, you do live in a unique time. Technology is part of that uniqueness. And I'm so gratified to see so many taking advantage of whatever they have in the way of technology, sometimes quite limited, to improve themselves, to progress, to grow, to reach out and bless others. But remember, you have to be the master. It doesn't master you, or you shouldn't let it master you. You are the master, and you use this tool that no other generation has had to be able to march forward more rapidly, to make more progress, to accomplish more of the Lord's work in greater speed and velocity, if you can say it that way. And I believe it is a very unique and exciting time. I would say simply remember this: there is no substitute for the Holy Ghost. No technology, no other recourse or source can replace the Spirit.
You have to be the master of your domain, Bill. What did you think?
So you and I spent time in a church that used to tell every generation that they were the most elect. They had been reserved for these last days. And I thought, I thought we've talked about this enough to go, guys, drop that. It isn't useful to say it over and over again, because sooner or later, the present generation is going to go, didn't you tell that to the last 5 generations?
Especially if they watch this show, because that's what they told us.
Yeah.
That's what they told the generation before us.
Yeah.
Apparently, they told that to you too, Bill. Is that right?
Yep. They told it to me. They told it to you. They told it to the generation of Brigham Young. And I mean, again, they were waiting then for the second coming, because Smith had promised that, 56 years will not go by unless the Son of Man come. But here they do it again. Eyring tells the audience, the people listening to this, that they have been born at the most exciting time in the earth's history.
And you can tell just by looking at him. He looks excited. He actually looks like he's having a good time. That's one of the things I want to say about President Eyring. I don't know what it is he's thinking. One of the comments in the live chat from the Friday show, when we showed clips of him in the interview, was that it looks like Henry is looking at angels on the wall. It's just like he's just constantly delighted by whatever it is he's seeing.
This is the same guy who kept his eyes open during the prayers at conference for conference after conference after conference. By the way, anybody listening to this, go into a search engine, go to a YouTube or a search engine and look up a YouTube video. Just look up Elder Eyring, eyes closed, conference, and you'll find where somebody in the crowd conference after conference keeps recording Eyring during the prayers, and he's got his eyes open. I'll just notice that my hunch is that at least 2 of these 3 men are wearing a diaper in this video. So it doesn't surprise me that Eyring is sort of staring off into the stars while the other guys are talking.
Yes, that's true. But these that is the thing. That is one of the main things, isn't it? What Henry Eyring says about you're the chosen generation.
Yeah.
In my day, it was the Pepsi generation. That's a throwback. But notice how this is a great example. This particular clip with all of them speaking, it's this way throughout the interview. And I mentioned this Friday, is that if you just listen to the words that they use, you would not know that they're talking about the Mormon church, that they're talking about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They are taking steps to avoid making the church look like what the church is, which is an exclusive, high-demand fundamentalist religion. And so they talk in terms of it's just Jesus, and all you have to do is believe in Jesus. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. We'll have a clip about that from Elder Oaks, right? It's all Jesus, to the point where when you're looking at it, you think, well, then what do you need the church for? If what you're saying is really what you believe, that you can't, okay. Some people say that salvation in Jesus Christ, okay, you can't be saved without Jesus, right? And the church would definitely say, and honestly, that you can't be saved without Jesus. The difference is that the church also says you can't be saved without the church. And you can't be exalted without the church. And I think that's one of the ways that other Christians would say that's why Mormonism isn't Christian as a general term. But anyway, what I'm going to say, let me throw it to you, Bill, for a second. Did you have any comments?
Just that there's a sentence in there, I think it was Oaks that said it.
Yep.
Said that you are better off in the church. Now
it's best in the church. That is the closest thing he got to talking about this is the only true and living church on the face of the earth, with which I, the Lord, am well pleased. The closest thing he got to that was saying it's best in the church. And then he continued with that sentence.
And that seems strange, because usually when the church answers a question like this, they talk about the church being the only place where one can be exalted, saved, not just the best place. Like, this isn't just the best place where, you're going to have the best chance of getting it done. It's the only place that has the keys, the priesthood power, the saving ordinances.
Yes.
And it feels like they softened up the rhetoric to say, you can do this anywhere. Mm-hmm. We think it's best here, but you could do this anywhere.
This is the nectar in the Venus flytrap.
Yeah.
They're not changing the church. They're just hoping to lure you in until they can snatch you with their jaws, get you baptized, and then over time you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
and a number of things that are said. Once again, President Eyring, there's not only one channel, there are several channels. I think this is called Rise Zion or something like that. There's Second Coming Mormon channels. And these guys say something like that, and immediately there's going to be a podcast about it and how, Jesus is coming back any second because, Henry B. Eyring told the 15th generation in a row that they're the last generation. They're the choicest generation, the ones that God saved for this time and day. I think they even did a musical about that like 50 years ago. That's Saturday's Warrior, right?
Saturday's Warrior.
Yeah. I guess it wasn't just, I don't know, 11:30, quarter till 12 on that clock, that big clock in the sky. This is actually from a show they did like 4 months ago, but it had Henry Eyring on it. Avoid one second coming mistake. There's one big mistake that everybody is making with the second coming. If you listen to President Eyring, you can find out what it is and how to avoid it. Here's President Oaks. These are much more recent. Final preparation coming. Yeah, that's always coming, but never here. Here's an interview. Hidden prophecy. By the way, this is about the interview. This is the kind of stuff they do. And I only bring this up because this is becoming a phenomenon in the church. There's a cluster of podcasts that do this kind of thing and get 20, 30,000 views on this sort of thing. This is the interview that we're talking about, Bill, the one they just had. And so they're finding a hidden prophecy in there. Now, I haven't watched it. I don't know if it's the unhidden prophecy that President Eyring made. Remember when he said, I'll venture a prophecy that the church will continue to grow?
Yeah, we'll see. Sooner or later, that prophecy doesn't, even if the church has a string of good luck, eventually that prophecy comes to a full stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's strange to hear him say it that way because the church is not growing the way they're claiming anyway. All right. Now we get to this one. This is the last clip, number 8, that I had done for this show. It's what thought would you like to leave with everybody? By the way, Bill, if we can get this to 1.5, that'd be really, really helpful. I almost fell asleep during the last clip.
All right, here we go.
I think
If there was one phrase or one scripture or one image that you would want members of the church to carry with them right now as you begin this prophetic ministry, what would it be?
Jesus Christ is the way. That is taught in at least five different important scriptures in the Book of Mormon. And I'll read you one from the sermon of King Benjamin, a prophet king, whose sermon to his people included this teaching. And moreover, I say unto you that there shall be no other name given, nor any other way nor means whereby salvation can come unto the children of men, only in and through the name of Christ, the Lord omnipotent. That's Messiah chapter 3, verse 17.
Jesus Christ is the way.
Is the way.
My feeling is exactly as what's been said. Jesus is the Christ, and he lives, and he watches over and loves us. And I know that is true. I know that it is the way to peace and happiness in all lives, is to come into the gospel of Jesus Christ, into his church. And so my invitation is not just come and see, come and be, and find the peace that you're finding such difficulty in discovering in the world around you.
As President Oaks mentioned a moment ago, the message really is Jesus Christ is the way. And I bear witness that that is true. He is the Savior. He is the Son of God. And he is resurrected. And for me, the fact of his resurrection is the proof of his power to fulfill all of his promises. It's the proof of who he is. And just remember that he volunteered to be our Redeemer from a time before the earth even existed, and has always been our Redeemer and will ever be.
I'm glad for this opportunity to testify that I know the gospel of Jesus Christ in its fullness is in the restored church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Here are found the answers to life's greatest questions. What is my relationship to God? Why am I here on earth? What is the purpose of this sometimes troublesome mortal life? Where are we headed? How do we get there? What is my relationship to Jesus Christ? And how can that relationship be improved? And I can live better and more securely with those I love and look forward to a life with them in the next life, which is assured as a resurrected, embodied spirit child of God because of the mission of his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, in whose name I testify of these things. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Did you have any thoughts about that?
Is the proof of his power his resurrection, or is the proof of his resurrection his power? Sounded a lot like circular reasoning to me, but who am I to see through that?
Look, the proof of my power to lift a 2-ton stone is in the fact that I once drank a river when I was 12.
Okay.
Do not doubt my power to lift that 2-ton stone, my friend.
Yeah.
So, and he's a lawyer. I mean, come on. It's embarrassing, frankly. Okay. There's a few things I wanted to say about this. Number one is that Elder Oaks, he goes right into Sunday school teacher mode. Actually, that's where I saw him be the most lively, was when he's reading the Book of Mormon, like pretending this is the first time he's ever read it. I mean, maybe it is the first time he's ever read it. That'd be it.
By the way, that's how you know that this was staged.
Yeah.
He asked a question and he's already got his scriptures open or his notes written about what scripture he's going to read to answer that question.
And he also knows that there's 5 other scriptures. There's 5 scriptures in the Book of Mormon, which he just counted up this morning for no other reason. Just happened to be. It was a coincidence.
Yeah.
He happened to know that when he's answering. It's a good thing she asked that question. Is all I can say. And then he comes up with the one in Mosiah 3:17 and all this stuff. So all I wanted to say was this, is I'm not sure which is the one. Let me try this one. Is this one okay? No?
That one's going to have the sound to it. So
Okay.
you want this one, right?
Yes, that's the one I wanted. Thank you so much. 5 verses in the Book of Mormon that talk about Jesus being the way. Wow. I wonder why there's so many verses in the Book of Mormon that would talk about something as strange as Jesus being the way. Here it is, Mosiah 3:17. And moreover, I say unto you, he just read this, that there shall be no other name given, nor any other way, nor means whereby salvation can come unto the children of men, only in and through the name of Christ the Lord omnipotent. Which does appear quite similar to Acts 4:12. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men, whereby we must be saved. And actually, when you compare these two, you can see that the meaning is identical, and it gives us an insight into how Joseph Smith sometimes interacted with biblical texts, is that he would multiply words in order to make it longer, have more clauses, perhaps more lists of words, but it's the same meaning. Do you see any difference between those two, Bill?
No. Are you going to point out a difference? Because then I'll.
No, I was asking because honestly, I don't see any difference. So I thought I'd throw it to you because maybe I'm missing it.
But
I
it is
think it's the same thing. But Joseph Smith writes the same thing in twice with twice the words.
Yeah, and there are numerous instances of this. Again, if the Book of Mormon is an ancient text of people who left Jerusalem, came over to the Americas, completely disconnected from the New Testament writings, those authors, and the time period in which that was written, it's a strange thing to have Acts 4:12 be similar enough to Mosiah 3:17. Although I guess the same message can be given, but we know that there are other instances where it is essentially verbatim, that what is said in one scripture in the Book of Mormon is said identically from Moroni to Paul, for instance, in the New Testament.
Yes, and one difference is Mosiah 3:17 actually includes, or I should say, uses the word way, nor any other way. That's a clause it adds, right? Way is not found in Acts 4:12. Wonder where that came from. There's this little known scripture in John chapter 14, verse 6. Could you read that, Bill?
Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me.
It's a freaking seminary scripture. This is one of the most famous scriptures in the New Testament. So anyway, all I'm thinking is that Elder Oaks could have quoted from the New Testament, but he chose to quote from the Book of Mormon on the subject. Certainly his right.
I love the optical illusion because we've seen multiple optical illusions, I think, in what they've been saying.
Is that groovy or what? That is groovy Jesus right there.
Your eyes tell you it's moving, but it is not moving at all. And your ears tell you that they're telling you the church is true, but it isn't at all.
What I find is that the movement comes from my moving my eyes over the surface of it, even a little bit. If I actually just focus on one spot, it does not move.
Yep.
There you go.
All
Hey,
right.
what's this?
Yeah, Salt Lake Tribune. We've been hearing a lot about how women are so thrilled to have these new tank top garments. So the Salt Lake Tribune went out and wanted to find out what the men thought. What LDS men think about new sleeveless garments. The Trib notes that many male members are pretty chill about the change. They're less focused on fashion and more on comfort, especially in hot and humid places where the old style felt heavy or old school. One member from Idaho summed it up, quote, "I don't really care about the style. I just think it'll be more comfortable during the hotter times of the year," unquote. Others like the flexibility and breathability of the updated bottoms. Everybody loves a breathable bottom, so that's good things for all. Noting the slimmer feel and less visible underlayer through their outer clothes. The vibe, hey, if it helps me feel less sweaty and more like me, I'm okay with it. But not everyone's on board. Some men worry the change shifts the garment's meaning from something sacred and internal. And remember, the phrasing they used in the temple question was it was an outward expression. Wearing the garment was an outward expression of an inner commitment to the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yes. By the way, do you know what Baptists and other Protestants have for centuries called baptism?
Mm-mm.
The outward expression of an inward grace.
See, same story.
Yeah.
So they've been beginning to wonder let me say this again. Some men worry that the change shifts the garment's meaning from something sacred and internal to something more tied to outward appearances. One designer member, and I don't know what they meant by that, but who lived in the UAE, argued that the garment is meant to be unseen, private, and symbolic. Now, by the way, that's what was taught to you and me, that the garments are private, it's supposed to be unseen, they're symbolic. It's not a trend that we were to shape our dress style to the garment and not to shape our garment to the dress style.
I think it's a little bit late to be asking those questions.
Yeah, it is. It is a little
how it started out.
Yeah, it's a little late at this point. He questioned whether altering its style for comfort might dilute the commitment behind wearing it. In short, for some, it's about what the garment stands for, and those men are asking if that's changing. So the church has tried to accommodate a shifting world, not because it's growing so incredibly well. That doesn't make any sense. You make these kinds of changes when you notice that your growth is beginning to drop off or working in reverse. But as the church has changed it, I just want the audience to recognize that some people inside the church are asking themselves if the church is giving up things it promised never to give up in order to make these changes. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, that's the end of that story. Any thoughts from you on the garment?
Oh, yes. What was it I had said before? I can't even remember. I should have made a note. I thought I would remember it.
Something about the question. It's a little late to be asking those questions now.
Oh, yeah. Just to make it clear for those who might not know, which would be the distinct minority of those watching, is that these started as union suits, which went from the wrist to the ankle. It was entire. So that's why I said it's a little bit late to be asking the question about whether modifying it is what did he say something about deleting or detracting from the commitment?
It might dilute the commitment behind wearing it.
Yeah.
And I live here in southern Utah, where there are a lot of fundamentalist Mormons, and they wear long sleeve and pants down to the ankle. The women wear dresses down to the floor for the exact same reason. The fundamentalist Mormons, the polygamous Mormons, are still wearing the full garment, all the way to the wrist, all the way to the ankle, and hence they wear clothing that appropriately covers that up. And you point out, we've made numerous changes when we promised that the garment couldn't be altered at all, to the extent that certain leaders of the church, Joseph either F. Smith or Fielding Smith, his son, one or the other was very resistant to any adaptations of the garment because he was under the belief that it had been given by God, hence its design was divine, hence it couldn't be changed or altered. But like the temple ordinances, everything changes.
And that's the thing, really, isn't it? This is one of the big things that led to my dissatisfaction, walking away from, not being active in anymore, the church, which is that it makes good sense. All right. And I think that's what's attractive about it. I think that's what was attractive about to me. There's a cohesion to it. And this idea that, if it's given, it's going to stay the same because it's given from God. And we've got revelation. And so we do what God tells us to do. But that's the theory of Mormonism. Then there's the practice of Mormonism. And the more you study and think about and look at the practice of Mormonism, the more you see that it has nothing to do with the theory of Mormonism. And it contradicts it in 100 different ways.
And you and I have pointed this out in numerous episodes, but the way it actually shows up in practice would be indiscernible from the way they describe the great apostasy.
Yes. Yeah.
All
All
right.
right. So I think there's a few other. This is a big story. You've got this one, Bill.
So BYU, so this was in, I believe, the Salt Lake Tribune as well. And this was BYU offered to pay for Barstool Sports broadcast in Provo, but only if the cast agreed to one condition. So Dave Portnoy, I don't know how you pronounce it, but Dave Portnoy, a Barstool Sports, says that Brigham Young University, BYU, didn't outright ban his show, though he's making it sound like a near ban. The student paper reported that BYU actually offered to help pay to have Barstool College football show broadcast from Provo for the upcoming rivalry game. But here's the catch. The school said the show could come only if they agreed to no swearing. And Barstool is known not necessarily for swearing a ton, but for not having a line in the sand that they don't. And so swearing does show up, or crassness does show up in their content creation of their episodes from time to time. I wouldn't say it's prevalent, but it's enough that they would have to mind their P's and Q's in order to stay away from it. Portnoy says that he wouldn't agree to that stipulation. He claims that BYU wanted them on site and were even willing to offset costs, but the language restriction made it a not in the cards scenario. So from his telling, it was less of a ban, more like we'll host you if you behave. And what's interesting here is that the underlying psychology of it, BYU has a specific culture and a standard, and Barstool has a brand that often depends on pushing boundaries. And this clash helps us see that BYU wishes to have the coverage that will benefit the university, to the extent, by the way, that they were willing to, above and beyond what normal schools do, they were willing to pay for more of the cost of putting on this production, so long as Barstool agreed not to swear. That this coverage would benefit the university, but in many cases only if done with its standards being honored. So what I'm trying to say here is that you get to see a real moment in time where we, on the post-Mormon side, we often feel like the church is always compromising its standards when it's convenient. And I'll just notice here that they hold to their standards when it would have been easy to not do so. And so I give kudos to the church for sticking to their standards. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Bill, I don't follow sports to the degree that you do or most people do. But is it true, the subheadline on this, that Portnoy led anti-BYU chants at the Utah-Texas Tech game 3 weeks ago?
Yes. So
was that FBYU?
Yeah. So Barstool's Dave Portnoy leads Utah crowd in anti-BYU chants, hypes rivalry. So Portnoy turned up back in September of 25 at the BYU-Utah rivalry promo, grabbed the mic, and led the crowd. I just wanted to find, hold on, give me 1 second here. He led the crowd in a loud BYU chant, basically diving headfirst into the most volatile part of the fan base and leaning into the chaos. It wasn't just playful ribbing with the rivalry's religious and cultural undercurrents. The movement underscored how he's not simply a visiting pundit, but someone willing to stir up deeper currents. Yes, he shows up in a promo and encourages the crowd to say F BYU, but to say the full F word, and gets them going. They all sort of get going and chanting. It makes sense knowing that, to know then why the church steps in and says, hey, we'd love to have you. We'll pay for you guys to be here. But the only way you're going to be here is if you agree not to swear, because they've already done it.
Can I just say, Bill, I just want to thank you for explaining that, because I wanted to understand. So this is the same guy who comes to now BYU and wants to have his podcast there?
Yes. And the school
for this game, for whatever game it is. Yeah.
Yep. In the school. So because he doesn't agree to the language boundary.
Okay. But I just want to understand. He went to BYU and asked to be there for their school. If I'd been BYU, I would not have been over backwards. I would have said, F you, pal. Pack it. Get out of here. After what you pulled. So I think BYU was way nicer than I would have been to this guy.
Yeah, the way the article explains it, it wasn't like he came to them and said, hey, what do you think about me doing this? It was that BYU reached out to have them be present. And when he doesn't agree to the language, he still shows up and he goes on. I don't know if it says it maybe in the next one here. But he ends up showing up still, just not with Barstool Sports doing their program. He shows up and he goes on like CBS's pregame or during the game little table talk where he sits down with them and he still answers questions and gives some commentary, but it's him representing himself rather than the Barstool program production. Yeah. And I'll just note that Deseret News came up with a follow-up article. They titled it, Dave Portnoy clarifies why the Barstool Sports college football show won't be coming to BYU this weekend. And the main quote I got out of this was this one here. BYU did not ban Barstool, Portnoy wrote in a post to X, formerly Twitter, Thursday afternoon. I'll just note too, that X post is there down below it. We only do 6 a year with Big Noon Kickoff. Just wasn't in the cards by all indications. BYU really wanted the Barstool show. And that's another moment where you see that it's actually BYU that wants them and not them wanting to ask BYU if they can do it. And we're even willing to offset the extra cost as long as we didn't swear. So I think this was a request that BYU initiated.
Incredible.
Yeah. Pretty impressive that they did that, regardless of what side of the story you stand on. So anyway, there's that. Any other thoughts from you on this story? I think that's it, other than there is one little quick thing.
There's so much more.
This isn't a big deal. This is really quick. Gordon Monson.
No, I've added slides.
Oh, I got you. Gotcha. Salt Lake Tribune, Gordon Monson put out this article. Barstool's Dave Portnoy offers the quote of the year about BYU and LDS culture. And he gets away from the story. What he really is wanting to point out is that Dave Portnoy goes to the creamery, I think, which is at BYU, if I'm not mistaken, and he goes to Swig. And so he visits the creamery. He describes it as an absolute mob scene around 1 p.m. on a Friday just to grab an ice cream cone. Although his favorite flavor is just chocolate chip, vanilla with chocolate chips. That wasn't available. He settled for a cookies and cream cone and pronounced it great ice cream. I'm an ice cream guy, and I gave it a 9.4. On the other side of the treat spectrum, Portnoy stopped at the local soda favorite Swig, famous for its dirty sodas, and was less enthused. He noted that a 20-minute wait in line, then called the flavor just like a Coke. I think I did Swig totally wrong. I don't know if he went to Swig and just ordered a regular Coke, or if he ordered one of the dirty sodas off the menu, but for whatever reason, whatever he ended up with, he said tasted just like Coke. So he seems to have not experienced SWIG in its full glory.
Is that the quote of the year about BYU and LDS culture?
This was what the article was making a big deal. Yeah, he wanted to take in the culture. So I think it was
a slow news day.
I think it was Monson just pointing out that Mormon culture of SWIG and the creamery and all that stuff, because we've got a creamery down here in Beaver, Utah, and I think it's the same entity. And it's this big giant building, and you can get like homemade cut up pieces of cheese, and you can go to a little diner there and get specialty kinds of like nachos supreme or a specialty hot dog. And then you go to the other side of this big building and they've got all this homemade ice cream. So Portnoy enjoyed the creamery, not so much SWIG, but there's what, anyway.
Were you covering the $50,000 fine assessed against BYU for the students swarming the field?
I did not cover that.
Crumble covered it.
Yes.
You didn't have to.
No. I learned, by the way, that the Crumble CEO is a Mormon.
By which I mean Crumble paid it.
Yeah.
On behalf of BYU. They covered it in that way. Not covered it as a story.
Right. BYU got fined $50,000 and the chief executive officer of Crumble paid the fine.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
Now this next thing. This is a text message thread that I had between myself and Rebecca Biblioteca. Bill's a part of this thread. You can vouch for the reality of this, Bill. And then I put some pictures in here. This was yesterday, and I'm just going to read this. Bill, I'm in blue. I'll read me. Would you read Rebecca's parts? You didn't really get involved in this. Did you even see this?
I saw it. I did not participate.
You're trying to clear yourself of any guilt?
I wanted to stay at arm's length away from this story. Yes.
I'm sure you did. You were doing something. Anyway, I said, I just played a trick on the sister missionaries in the triplex. Now, I got an apartment, 3 apartments, a triplex. I'm on one end, then there's a middle one, then there's the sister missionaries on the other end. And, we see each other. We say hi. We're friendly. I just played a trick on the sister missionaries in the triplex. I expect they won't be getting a lot of sleep tonight. Your turn, Bill.
Spill the tea.
That's very good. It sounds just like Rebecca. It sounds more like Geraldine than Rebecca. Can you say that again?
Spill the tea.
Okay, thanks. When we pulled in late this afternoon, I noticed their front door was wide open. I parked and we walked down to their apartment. Sure enough, the front door was wide open.
What? That's scary.
Their car wasn't there, so it looked like an accident, by which I mean an accident that the door was open.
Did you check the closets?
I stood in the doorway and called really loud. Nobody answered.
Yikes.
Okay. Wendy checked the open door and found it was locked. So they probably locked it as they left and pulled it closed, but it didn't latch.
So it just didn't close?
It was very windy today, and that must have blown their front door open. So being a good neighbor, I pulled their door closed and made sure it locked. That way they would never know it had blown open. I am such a nice person.
Did you leave anything in the apartment to make them think Jesus had been there?
Rebecca is really devious, isn't she? Now you get to know the true Rebecca behind the scenes. What I responded was, they had a nice pumpkin on their little front porch. Their apartment is the same as ours, just reversed, because she's been here to visit. So she knows what our layout looks like. On top of the pumpkin, I continue, was a big, hairy Halloween spider. Before I closed the door and locked it, I put the pumpkin in the middle of their living room with the big, hairy spider on top. I'm sure they appreciate it.
You better tell them you did it. That's scary.
Missions aren't for the faint of heart. And now it's hard for me to see this because of the scroll. Thank you. And then I said, I left them their own little locked door mystery. And then I finally said, let's see how they do with it. So anyway, apparently, then I published this. I put this up on my Facebook page. And of course, it has Rebecca involved. And so over on her Facebook page, people are coming after her. One particular person named Hayden Nix. Oh my gosh. Yes, the pearl clutchers are coming out in force. Here's what he says. I'm going to let you read Rebecca's too. Can you read that, Bill? I'm going to read. I'll read Hayden first.
Okay.
How could you encourage RFM to enter illegally into a sister missionary apartment and look through their stuff? How sick are you guys?
Before I read her thing, and I'll read it here. It's such a strange thing because when Rebecca tells you to check their closet, she's asking you as a grown man to make sure that there isn't some perpetrator who's hidden himself in their home. The request is nothing unhealthy at all.
No.
But Rebecca responds, Hayden Nix, I didn't encourage him to do that. He told me the story after the fact, and I wanted to make sure that he checked in case there was an intruder. I was looking out for their safety. When you see an open door and you know that vulnerable girls live there, you need to help out. And RFM always looks out for the missionaries that live in that apartment in his building.
Yes, and that's true. You know, the more you do that, the more you sound like Miss Piggy.
Hey there, Miss Piggy. How are you?
You can do them both.
I can. Hi there, RFM.
And on my Facebook page, there's some other pearl clutchers who've come forth. So I decided I would post this one response to rule them all. And that was this on my Facebook page. Can you read that, Bill?
I can see your response.
That's all it is.
Okay. If only members got this upset when the church covers up child abuse cases.
Oh, yeah. I got the idea for that from Colby Reddish. I
Yeah.
modified it a bit. But man, I give a lot of credit to people. Well, it's because if I see further than others, it's because I stand on the shoulders of Colby.
You
And
have this moment where their door is open. Somebody could have gotten in. Rebecca says to make sure that nobody's in there. You go in, you play this little tiny prank thing.
Yes.
And people are bothered when really they should have celebrated that this person who is a critic of the church is looking out for the sister missionaries. Meanwhile, sex abuse cases seem to happen multiple times on the weekly in this institution.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody cares.
We can't cover them all on this show.
No.
There are actually times when we don't cover them because we can't cover them all.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
But thank goodness there's Spotlight.
Here's the weird thing too. When Rebecca suggested that you check the closets, their first thought was that she was telling you to check the closets as if to be nosy.
Yes.
When it was very clear that both of you understood clearly that the goal was to protect the missionaries.
Can I tell you, I said Spotlight, Catholic, I meant Floodlit, Mormon. Thank goodness there's Floodlit to cover all the stories. But yeah, and the funny thing is, I didn't realize that's what they meant until you said it, because it was so obvious to me when she's saying, did you check the closets? It's to see if there's anybody hiding in there. And of course I didn't check the closets. You know why? Because there might've been somebody hiding in there. So that's about all I have to say about that. However, I did go over there this morning and, you know, I mean, my gosh, what a thrill. It's Halloween time, you know, have a little spookiness, have a little strange, you know, teleportation. And I was thinking what would happen? Well, first thing is they're going to think that somebody else did it, right? And they would be right, but they would think within a limited section of people. And then those people would deny it. And then they would either believe them and then they get spookier, or they wouldn't believe them and they'd get into a knife fight in the apartment or something. So nothing bad's going to happen. Anyway, I went over to see him this morning before I came in and knocked on the door. They came to the door. I said, hi. And I said, hey, I just wanted you to know that yesterday I came here and the door was wide. I told them the whole story. Door's wide open. And I was here with Wendy on a windy day. And I took your pumpkin and your spider and I put them in the middle of your living. Middle it was 1 step, 2 step, boom. And then I'm out. So, by the way, and that's where they were still. As of this morning, they were still in the place where I left them. And they said, oh, that's okay. We just thought the other companionship did it.
Mm.
So apparently they didn't believe their protestations of innocence. They would have sent him to the chair. And I said, so you didn't, there was nothing? I'd hoped I'd give you at least a spooky experience. And they said, nah, but thanks for trying. And then they said, hey, you're an angel. That's what Sister Nelson said. That you are an angel to do that for us. And I didn't say my favorite Sherlock Holmes quote, which is, I may be on the side of the angels, but don't for a minute confuse me with one. I'm not an angel. It was very nice of her to say that. And then they've really enthusiastically offered to do any service for me, which was weird, but I couldn't think of anything. I said, if I think of anything, I'll let you know. Maybe they'd come on the show. That would be service. What do you think about that?
They probably didn't know the story about an angel with a drawn sword, do they? They still think of angels as just the good guys. Yeah.
I'm a good angel.
Yeah.
And you can tell from this. Here's a picture that I like to call Radio Free Mormon acting like an angel in watching over the sister missionaries.
Look at that. You've got a drawn sword in this one.
And is that a sword or is that a sheet? I'm not even sure what that is. Is that an errant feather?
No idea. Maybe it is just a feather that fell off your wings.
It looks like there's a spear sort of sticking up there behind me. It could be. It could be a dagger. Is this a dagger I see before me, the handle toward my hand? And here I am over here helping these two little urchins across the bridge.
Look at you. Everybody doubting your motives, which makes me wonder what their motives are, because they could have just seen the good in what you and Rebecca were trying to accomplish and left it at that and said, thank you very much.
The only thing that makes me feel better about this whole thing is that Jesus went through it before I did.
Persecution and being crucified by the public.
And so misunderstood. That's why he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Yeah. Well, you are an angel, RFM, at least to all of us.
Thank you very much. Now, what's next? Oh, I want to show this. Taking on the name of Christ. This was sent to me by a listener. I really wanted to get to it before we get too far from General Conference. It's a very short story, but this is the part in General Conference where Elder Renlund is speaking, and he's giving this glowing eulogy of sorts to President Nelson. And he's talking about this other doctor. Okay, so of course, President Nelson, heart surgeon. He's talking about this other heart surgeon, and I'm forgetting his name. It might be Denson or something. Anyway, what happens is that this Denson guy at the University of Utah, this heart surgeon, gets this award, which comes with, a lot of money and funding for this chair, the Russell M. Nelson chair, or whatever it's called when you're a surgeon, that he is a heart surgeon there. And how this heart surgeon is thinking, I've got 4 days to go before I get this award. This is years in the past now, a few years in the past. And 4 days before, he has this really hard day, and he talks about how, oh man, he had such a hard day. And then he realized that one of his patients that he just operated on that day, he's going to have to go back in again. Doesn't say why, but that always sounds, alarming. But then he didn't think of Jesus and say, what would Jesus do? He thought of President Nelson and said, I'm receiving this Russell M. Nelson Award in 4 days, and I need to be more like him. And so he was able to master himself and get through it with aplomb and professionalism, all because of Russell M. Nelson. Then he talks about, now this is the part we're going to play, okay? Because now, once again, the paths will cross, and you're going to have this heart surgeon at University of Utah speaking about the Russell M. Nelson lapel pin.
And I'll just say before I push play, man, these guys are all old at this point. He's old. Holland's old. Bednar's old. Eyring's old. Christofferson's 80 years old. I mean, they're all old.
Even to be a clerk during Watergate.
Yeah. There you go. All right, here it is.
5 years later, President Nelson donated his professional papers to the University of Utah. Dignitaries from the university came to formally thank President Nelson. During this event, Dr. Selzman spoke again. Referring to President Nelson's initials, RMN, he said, "There is an RMN ethos that now pervades the division of cardiothoracic surgery at the University of Utah. In frustrating situations," Dr. Seltzman explained, "I do what we now teach our trainees to do. Focus, get over it, and do the best you can." This ethos lives in us every day. We give lapel pins to every member of the division and each new trainee. At the bottom of the pin are the letters RMN. The RMN ethos is foundational to our training. We teach it to everyone. Dr. Seltzman had intentionally improved his prior attitude and aspirations because his name was now linked to that of President Nelson.
Okay, the first thing I got to say is if I'm going to have a guy open me up and operate in my heart, I would like for his ethos to be something other than focus, get over it, and do the best you can. The get over it part is the one that's particularly alarming to me, I've got to say. Okay, but a listener to the show had sent in a comment that I wanted to read in context, and it wasn't Denson, it was Selzman. Dr. Selzman was this heart surgeon who was displaying the pin, the ethos pin. And let me see here. Thank you so much. That was what I was looking for, Bill. Okay, here it is. My sister, who still goes to church, works in human resources at the University of Utah. During Renlund's talk about Dr. Selzman, that would be the sister, she and her coworkers were all messaging each other and losing their minds because he is well known in the hospital for being a gigantic asshole. He's constantly causing problems by loudly saying some pretty awful things all over the floor, particularly in front of patients. That's just some information I find fun and thought you might enjoy. Well, I did enjoy it, and I hope everybody else did too. What did you think about it, Bill?
It seems to point to that this isn't all rah, everyone's behind this story, RMN, ethos. All the folks with me at the hospital all appreciate this attitude that's been given to us through President Nelson.
It reminds me of the stories that were told about President Nelson's professionalism.
Yeah, didn't he throw something and it stuck into somebody?
Yeah, I think it stuck into him. He claimed somebody else threw the scalpel that stuck in his forearm. Now this is next part to your story, right, Bill?
Yeah, but let me just say really quick, and then I'll take this off.
Yeah, go ahead.
Russell Nelson, again, he did play some part in the invention of some technology that helped with, like, I don't know, it was heart transplants or whatever it was. But they play that story up like he's one of the main people in it. And I don't know this for sure. What little I've gotten through the grapevine about that experience was that he really was one of the lesser people involved. He was sort of an assistant to some part of the process and wasn't really in charge of any of it. And I feel like this happens a lot, where whether it's embellishing a story or embellishing one's personal experiences, Paul H. Dunn, that church leaders, Nelson certainly at the crux of many of these stories, these leaders seem to make themselves larger than life when maybe they didn't do anything that grand in that moment to begin with.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll say that. All right. So I wanted to start off by just noting that the author of this article is not the Brad Wilcox. It's just another Brad Wilcox. The Brad Wilcox we're going to be talking about is director of the National Marriage Project at the University of Virginia, senior fellow of the Institute for Family Studies, and a Deseret News contributor. So not the Brad Wilcox that we're all familiar with, and not, what's his name?
Not the bongo from the Banana Splits.
I do have to say, the more I see those two pictures, the more I think they look alike.
Just put, sunglasses on Brad.
Yeah, and a funny hat.
Mm-hmm.
And you might have it.
You wouldn't be able to tell them apart, really.
So the article from the Deseret News is on the right, and you'll see down there at the bottom, the authors are Maria Bear and Brad Wilcox. Again, not our Brad, but another Brad. The title of the article is Perspective. It's time to push back against the glamorization of polyamory. The Deseret News dropped an opinion piece arguing that monogamy, one man, one woman, is far better for kids, society, and the common good than polyamory, which essentially is plural marriage.
Is this a Mormon newspaper?
This is a Mormon newspaper. The irony is thick when you remember this is the faith that once championed and actively practiced plural marriage, which is polyamory, defended it as a doctrine, and wove it into their cultural identity. The piece suggests that spreading affectionate romantic investment among multiple partners creates complexity, divides attention, and weakens the social fabric, especially when children are involved. In short, the church is quietly siding with the idea that simplicity of one spouse, one marriage, has structural benefits. For folks like us who've been around the block watching how doctrine, identity, and cultural practice shift, this reads less like progress and more like a subtle rebranding of what was once justified under revelation. Not relevation. What's his name? Brother Steve.
Revelation.
Yeah. If you've ever asked, how did we get here? This piece is worth a scan. It doesn't attack the past. It doesn't even talk about Mormon polygamy, but it clearly signals that the plural marriage era, which has long been defended, is no longer being articulated. I got weaker, but no longer being articulated as the stronger societal model.
Yeah, because they used to say monogamy was the weaker model and polygamy was the stronger.
Yeah, and I included here, I don't want to read all of these. We could read one or two if we wanted to, but this is 6 quotes. Rebecca put these together for a Mormonish either post or a short, but these are 6 quotes from the church where they articulate that monogamy is the weaker way to structure a society, that polygamy is the better way. And now you have the Deseret News telling you that multiple people in a loving relationship, that a person having multiple romantic interest is not good for society. I don't know how they didn't see that this was going to rub up against polygamy and essentially have the Deseret News saying we got it wrong all along.
There seems to be such a lack of awareness of the ramifications of what the church publishes.
Yeah.
In other words, it's not like you're playing chess and you have to think 7 steps ahead or 5. I'm just talking 1 step ahead. Just look at 1 step ahead as to what the ramifications of what you're saying is and think about whether you really want to say that.
Yeah. If polyamory is bad, and polygamy is a form of polyamory, isn't polygamy bad?
Yeah, the church has a love-hate relationship with polygamy. They can't live with it. They can't live without it. George Cannon, can I read that one from Journal of Discourses, volume 13, page 202? This is a representative. It is a fact worthy of note that the shortest-lived nations of which we have record have been monogamic. In other words, they practice monogamy. Rome, with her arts, sciences, and warlike instincts, was once the mistress of the world, but her glory faded. It's funny, he says shortest lived. I don't think Rome was that short-lived. She was a monogamic nation, and the numerous evils attending that system early laid the foundation for that ruin which eventually overtook her. So monogamy is what was practiced by the barbaric Romans, was a very common argument that was made, and thus talking about how polygamy is not only revealed from God, it is superior as a societal institution to monogamy.
Look at that bottom left one. This is Samuel W. Richards. This was in the Millennial Star. The one-wife system not only degenerates the human family, but both physically and intellectually, but it is entirely incompatible with philosophical notions of immorality. It is a lure to
No, hang on. That says immortality. I'm not sure what he means by it, but it says immortality.
Oh, sorry. I think I said immorality.
Yeah.
Is entirely incompatible with philosophical notions of immortality. It is a lure to temptation and has always proved a curse to a people. The church, people have argued, by the way, before that the church is looking, it really would love some way to bring polygamy back. And my gut tells me the church would like to stay as far away from polygamy till the end of time as it can.
This is why they're so mad at Michelle Stone, who really we haven't heard anything from. She's been keeping her end of the bargain to stay in the church and was allowed herself to be silenced. It's a tough choice. No judgment here. I just wish that she had done it differently, but it's her life, and I'm going to respect that. But that's why they're so mad at people like Michelle Stone and people who want to talk and argue that Joseph Smith did not practice polygamy. The church doesn't want to talk about it. This is a no-win scenario for the church. To talk about it is to lose. That's why these people are driving them crazy.
Yeah, and I could always see a day, and of course we lived in it, but I could always see a day where the church just stayed away from talking about it, as you just pointed to. But now we're beginning to see articles come out in the church news. It's Deseret News arm, it's media arm, and the story is that something other than monogamy, with one facet of that being polygamy, is not good for society. And yet we did it. We justified it. It was horrific. Polyamory at least is consensual. Polyamory is at least people getting together with informed choice and deciding to do something. And yet Mormonism has a real struggle acknowledging the unhealthiness, manipulation, deception, and abuse that went on in its own polygamy.
It's almost like these largely philosophical differences that existed in the early church under Joseph Smith's practice of polygamy, when others did it in order to satisfy their lusts. Well, that was wrong, right? And that was like spiritual wifery. Okay, that was spiritual wifery. That's not true spiritual wifery, which is known as polygamy. So they're doing it wrong, and they're equivocating over something of a difference that is so small. I mean, what is it even? Is it just the terms? Is it because I didn't say you could? Is that really the only difference? And it's sort of like the same distinction being made here between polygamy and polyamory.
Yeah, I think you hit it. The only difference is that the prophet said you could do it in this instance and didn't give permission in that instance.
Wow. Did we get through this all without Rebecca?
That's it. The Mormon Newscast.
What do you know? And we've got a few things that are coming up, don't we, Bill?
We do. So I'll put some slides up. You can tell us about these. By the way, I wanted to put, I don't know if Rebecca has something coming out Tuesday, but she indicated to me in one of our messages in our text thread that she didn't have any access to a computer to be able to pass anything along to me. So I apologize if Mormonish does have something on Tuesday night. Please do check them out if they do. But this is the stuff I did have access to. You had an episode come out Saturday.
Yes, it's a very important episode. It's called Black Mormonism. I have two friends on who are Summer Rain, who when I watched it on the rewatch for the live chat on Saturday night, I was mortified to see I had pronounced her name Ryan. Summer Rain. It's R-A-Y-N, but I did something in my head. Anyway, and Charles, who's not giving his last name publicly at this point, though he did appear with his face. He goes by Black Priesthood in the live chat. So that's another way to identify him. And it was amazing because there are stories here that will freeze your blood about modern Mormonism and the impact the church and its policy doctrine on the church and temple band, and also on discouraging strongly interracial marriages, have impacted the lives of the members of the church. So hopefully you'll have a chance to watch that. A lot of times, if you see something that says Black Mormonism, you might think we're going to go through the history and just go through the same stuff that's maybe been chewed up in other episodes. We talk a little bit about some of the quotes and get Summer and Charles' thoughts about them, but we skip over most of those because what we want to get into is contemporary issues, and especially how it related to this past General Conference and talks that were given that relate to this.
I just want to note a couple of things. One is that GeoPlanet Jane is just noting that the thumbnails, the images of you, the photos that you use of you are really remarkable. I just want to note that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So. Those eyes are piercing, I must say.
Yeah.
Piercing eyes.
Yeah. The comment, I haven't had a chance to watch this yet, but the comments on this episode were phenomenal. So, folks, if you've missed this episode, I would highly suggest going back and watching it. I'll also note too, just before we get to the end, if folks, I forgot what I was going to say. That's okay. The next one here is Almost Awakened. This is fragilization. So Teresa and I go into how we live in a world today that makes a lot of room for validation, a lot of room for us to honor that people have been through tough things. And that one of the negatives of that, the other side of the coin of that, is that maybe we make society too fragile. And so this was a fun conversation where we talk about both sides of the coin, how we need to make room for people who have experienced trauma, because often our work is trying to reach people who have experienced trauma in unhealthy religious systems, but that you're supporting somebody or helping somebody or giving an ear to someone who's dealt with tough things, that if you go too far, you can actually fragilize the person and cause more harm than the good you're trying to do. And so that was an episode we put out Sunday morning. And then I'll let you talk about what we've got going Wednesday for Mormonism Live.
Yeah, we're going to have Lee Cronenberg. I think that's a close approximation of his name. It's not Cronenberg?
Krayenthal.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, okay.
Lee Krayenthal is going to be coming back to the show after his much acclaimed first appearance, which was a year or two ago. He's going to be talking about Brigham Young, matchmaker to the stars. He is an investigator, a researcher, writer into the history of Mormonism and aspects of Mormonism that I've never, ever heard before, but he documents them. He puts things together. He comes to some remarkable conclusions. And the first person in the live chat who can guess what is the inspiration for this portrait of Brigham Young gets a genuine gold-plated no prize.
It'll be made of Tumbaga.
Tumbaga no prize. Yes.
All right. There's that.
There's that. And that's the end of it. We did it.
Yeah. The only thing I'll note is donations, by the way. The Mormon Newscast survives on donations, and it's donations to both Mormonish and to RFM and I. And so if you look down in the YouTube description for this episode, you'll see both of those links there. Doesn't matter to us. Of course, I know RFM will jump in and say, but yes, but it does matter which one. But I'll say it doesn't matter to me. Pick one of those. Pick Mormonish, pick ours. But donate to one of those places. Support the Mormon Newscast. And please do subscribe to both channels.
Thank you so much, Bill. And thanks, everybody, for watching. I've had a great time tonight. And we wish Rebecca happy voyages wherever she may be. And hopefully she'll make it back to see us again next Monday, 6:00 p.m. Mountain Time, for another episode of the Mormon Newscast. Good night, everyone.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.